Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Two prospects with an increasing amount of buzz behind them will fight on the same card this weekend in California, which is being headlined by a welterweight contest between Victor Ortiz and John Molina. The 5-0 prospect Joyce will face fringe contender Iago Kaladze in his US debut. They're on either side of this photo. While 6-0 Nigerian Efe Ajagba will take on little-known but unbeaten prospect Nick Jones. So I'll start with the Joyce vs 26-3 Kaladze. This for me, it's a solid introduction to a US audience. Kaladze, a former cruiserweight who's been at heavyweight for a couple of years now. He's got decent size at 6'3", decent fundamentals as he showed in his loss to Adam Kanowski, and he's a good mover. So I expect he will try to utilise movement against Joyce, similar to some of the movement Efe Ajagba tried to use against Joyce, although I expect Kaladze won't fold like a deck chair if his hair is ruffled by a passing punch, like Ajagba did. But Joyce, he should have too much for the Georgian fighter in this 8-rounder, and I do expect the 33-year-old to stop Kaladze in emphatic fashion within 4 or 5 rounds. And Joyce could well spend the opening couple of rounds just tracking Kaladze down, but I do expect he will catch up with him, eventually. It's important that Joyce does look good in this fight. It's his first fight under new trainer Abel Sanchez, and perhaps more importantly, it's his first fight since signing with advisor Al Heyman. If Joyce impresses and he closes the show in style, there will be a path to bigger and better fights under the PBC banner in the US, but also potentially bigger fights in the UK. There's actually nothing online to suggest that Joyce has split from his Haymaker Ringstar arrangements. Richard Schaefer, the Ringstar part of that joint venture with David Haye, he is promoting the card that Joyce is fighting on this weekend. But I digress. If Joyce can look good, his stock goes up, a little bit of interest builds, and he progressively gets better fights, and within a year to 18 months, he should and could be mixing it with the division's best contenders. He might only be 5-0 now, but he's just had his 33rd birthday, so he will be pushed along at an accelerated rate for a prospect, or otherwise his prime is just going to pass him by. That's a reality, so they're going to have to move him quickly. And if I was to pick some future opponents, I think some of the guys like fellow PBC signed or affiliated fighters such as Travis Kaufman, Artis Spilka, Gerald Washington, Oscar Rivas, Charles Martin, or Izu Agono, they could be in the mix for a United States-based fight in the next 12 months or so. He will need to beat one or two of those type of opponents, not necessarily them, but at that level, to keep working his way up the rankings. Right now, he's got one ranking, he's 14th in the WBA, and given how thin that top 15 looks, he could well rise quickly in the WBA. So there is pressure for Joyce to look good to some extent, perhaps dominant in fact, take care of business, take care of Kaladze in emphatic fashion. So if Kaladze is able to frustrate or spoil, make Joyce work harder than he should, or perhaps Joyce even struggles in spots, it's not going to be a good look for Joyce. But I'm sure if he did, that would be put down to a learning fight, a learning experience. But in the main, I'm expecting he is going to impress us. As I mentioned earlier, Joyce is now with Abel Sanchez, so it will also be interesting to see what Sanchez has been able to do with Joyce in a short space of time. They've only been together a couple of months. I'm not expecting to see anything dramatic, but there may be a few tweaks here and there where we go, okay, well that's an Abel Sanchez thing at work. The other heavyweight on the card of note is 24-year-old Efe Ajagba, whose profile got a huge boost when he got a disqualification win over Curtis Harper in August 2018. And that was when Harper left the ring after 1 second into the first round, and it ended up being a protest over his pay being cut shortly before the fight. But that walkout, that went viral and people were asking, who is Efe Ajagba? So a lot more people now know who Efe Ajagba is, even though he didn't fire a punch in that fight. Unfortunately, it did end Ajagba's first-round knockout streak, which he will look to re-establish against the 7-0 Nick Jones, who actually I know nothing about. But BoxRec, it doesn't even have a picture of him. And given Ajagba is seen as one of the top guys in the division, you'd have to imagine that Jones is being fed to the hungry Nigerian who'll look to end the 6-rounder early. He'll be going for another first-round knockout if he can get it, I'm sure. Just to add to his highlight reel, keep building the buzz, keep building the hype that is starting to surround the 24-year-old. And in terms of Ajagba, I'm not expecting him to be rushed over the next 12 to 18 months. He's only 6-0 at the moment, soon to be 7-0. And I expect to see him in a lot more learning fights, gradually stepping up in the next year or so. There definitely is something there with Ajagba. He's got really good power and a massive 88-inch reach. That's sort of knuckles dragging on the ground stuff for someone who's 6'5". He is an intriguing prospect, and this weekend should be another knockout on the hit parade. What do you make of it all? What are you expecting from Joyce in this US debut? And also, Efe Ajagba, what do you make of him? We didn't see him throw a punch in his last fight, but he does look like a prospect to watch. Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.